Hello, my name's Gillian Jones-Williams, and I'm here to talk to you about building your brand as a woman. This is a webinar that we originally shared on International Women's Day, but it's brought to you so that you can watch whenever you would like to. So what we're going to talk about is the importance of building a personal brand and how we build a brand that is authentic. Sometimes as women, we think that we should be emulating men or we should come across in a way that's not so feminine, but authenticity is really important. And understand how important it is to actually market our brand to the relevant people. And then you can start to think about how do you plan to increase your visibility by selling your brand. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about branding, networking and visibility. I work with a lot of women, and on the whole, when I mention the words networking, they scurry away or they say, oh, I hate networking. So I don't know what reaction you're having to the word networking. And they often think about it as a very uncomfortable meeting where you're stood in the corner, perhaps with some warm wine in your hand, and not knowing who to go and talk to. But it's not all about that, and I'd like to talk to you about some of the different things that you can do. But first of all, let's talk about why it's so important. And this research was some research that was done by Harvey Coleman, who is ex-IBM. And it's some shocking facts. He looked at what made people successful, what got people promoted, and what got them promoted fast. And he found 3 buckets of things that helped people to get promoted. I wonder if you could think about what those buckets are. You're probably thinking about the way that you present yourself, how influential you are, the gravitas, obviously your knowledge, your expertise, and all of those things. So they come into this. But the 3 buckets that he identified were, number 1, visibility. Number 2, the way that you do your job. Number 3, your image. Now, when he said image, he wasn't talking about how attractive or handsome somebody was. It was about how are they perceived? How are they presenting themselves? Do they come across as very emotionally intelligent? Do they seem like a can-do, positive person? Will they put their hand up for things? Are they asking intelligent questions? And then when you think about it, where do you think each of those go on this diagram? Your image, your visibility, and the job. Well, in theory, job would be 60%. Because that's very, very important, the way that you do your job. But actually, it's not. Your job quality is only 10%. Now, that doesn't mean that you only need to do your job 10%. It means you could be doing your job 100%, but it's not enough to get you promoted. Next on the list is image, which is 30%. But a massive indicator of whether you're going to be successful, and that's successful as a person or maybe an organization that's successful, is about your visibility. Quite shocking when you look at it that way, isn't it? And I bet you know of people, or maybe you've even been that person, who works extraordinarily hard but doesn't get noticed, and other people around them who are not working so hard or is not as good as their jobs actually getting promoted, and that's because they're talking to the right people and people have heard of them. So maybe that started to get you to think about whether you're inclined to do a bit more with your networking and visibility. And if we wanted to put our cynical heads on for a second, I could ask the question, so do you think it's possible that some people don't do the job particularly well, but they're so good at visibility and projecting the right image that they get promoted? And the answer, sadly, of course, is yes. I've followed those type of people around. They talk a really good talk, but if you look at what they've actually been doing, they haven't been doing the work. So there's our motivation for building our brand, increasing our brand, and making sure we get it out there. And often what happens, we think to ourselves, when I have time, I'll do a bit more networking, I'll do a bit more about getting myself known. But that time doesn't come. So when you think about your brand, we've depicted it here as a tin. You can think about, what would my tin say about me? If somebody was looking along the shelf and wanted to pick out something that stood out, what would it say on my tin? And sometimes people say, it would say I was loyal and hardworking and trustworthy, and that's fantastic. We look for those qualities in anybody that we're recruiting, really. But what else does it say about you? How are you describing yourself so that you stand out more? Is it your agility? Is it your innovation? Is it your ability to connect with stakeholders at all levels? It's really important that you know this, because you can't sell yourself if you don't know the qualities that you are selling. So have a really good think about it, because if we want to be authentic and we want to be different, we've got to really analyse, what is different about me? Why would people want to get me involved in projects? Why might I be recruited for that next position there? And that's because you demonstrate who you are well, and you demonstrate that you are different. One of the ways that we do this is by thinking about our strengths. Now, it's a really unusual thing, isn't it? Because often we say strengths and development areas. It's in every performance review that we do. However, being able to identify and maximise your strengths is critical. If you only ever work on your development areas, you're likely to become nothing but mediocre. But if you work and develop your strengths, then you can be excellent. And a strength is something that just comes naturally to you. You find it easy, you get in your flow. It's something which you know inside of you, you can just do without it being too much of a struggle. There are certain development areas you have to work on because it is part of your role. But imagine this. Imagine if you were a fantastic pianist and I said to you, that's brilliant, but I also want you to play another 5 instruments, just in case. And you started to spend a lot of time on saxophone, which you found you weren't so good at, and violin, which you were okay with, but not great. What would happen to your skills as a pianist? They would undoubtedly drop. So if we know what our strengths are, if we've really analysed them, one of the things that we can do is learn to talk about them. How do I tell people what my strengths are? How am I ready when I apply for a promotion to talk about what I'm really, really good at? And that can be something which really differentiates you. If you're not sure what your strengths are, an interesting thing to do is what we call a strengths portrait. And that would be to send out an email or a text to maybe 10 or more people, could be family, friends, colleagues, bosses, ex-bosses, and ask them, could you tell me what my strengths are? Now, a lot of people are uncomfortable about this because you're not asking for your weaknesses. You could say, I'm doing an exercise as part of my development and I've been asked to look at them. And when you get them back, start to look for the themes. What are people talking about that you're really good at? And see how that sits with you. And then think about, is this something that I really should be developing? So once we've done that, then we can start thinking about, how do I really put this together so I can sell myself? And maybe there's something about doing a brand inventory. It's always worth doing an inventory of yourself or your job or your role or your house, all sorts of things we can do inventories on. But first of all, getting really, really clear on your skills and credentials. Often what happens is we stop thinking about our skills and credentials until we update our CV. And then, of course, it's hard to remember, what courses have I been on? What have I developed? And what passions and interests do I have? And also, what achievements have I made? So I would absolutely recommend that you keep a running list of your achievements, so that if you are going to sell yourself for a new project or for a promotion, you can talk about those. When you're doing a project, or if you're getting something out, or you're working with somebody, have a look at what was the actual achievement and remember to keep a note of that. It's also worth thinking about, what are my core values and beliefs, and how do I weave these in to my brand? And does it really jump out at you that I am a very agile person who loves change and embraces it, or I'm somebody who's always coming up with new ideas? Or potentially I'm someone who's looking to leave a legacy. It could be anything, but really think about your brand. Some of the key things that you can do when you're thinking about your brand are these. What's my vision for it? Just like a department or an organisation has a vision, what do you want to be known for? If you've got that clear in your head, it's much easier to be authentic. If you want to be known for being a disruptor, fine. Just make sure that that's clear and authentic in your brand. What's your mission? Why do you want a personal brand? What are you here to achieve? What are you here to do? And if you can't think of these two things, then think very, very carefully about the role you're in at the moment. Is it the right role for you if you're struggling to come up with a vision? And then it's about, what do I want to communicate? And people get very nervous about this because they think it's about showing off, but it's not. It's about making sure that the people who should know about you do know about you in other departments, maybe colleagues, peers, or other people that you interface with. And then it's about personality as well. And I think that's great, because we don't want everything to be so corporate that people don't see us and see the real us as well. So we need to begin with the end in mind. What's our vision for our brand? How do we want to come across? How do we want people to perceive us? And that helps with the image part of that model. One of the other things I think is really important and often gets missed out by people is understanding your relationship landscape. And a very easy way to do this is to do a relationship map or a stakeholder map. Now, if you're in the business of projects, and you might not think you are in the business of projects, but for me, a project is something which has a beginning and an end. So me delivering a webinar is a project. It has a beginning and an end. And when you have something with a beginning and an end, you have stakeholders. Now, your project might be long-term, it might be producing something quite big, or it might be quite short. But if we don't know who our stakeholders are and we aren't communicating effectively with them, then our image and visibility goes down. So quite simply, you can do this by drawing a map. I do it with post-its and I draw circles. And I think about everybody that I have to interface with, and I draw them inside a circle. The bigger the circle, the more important that they are. Then what I do is I place them, and I start thinking about, how much contact do I have with them? And depending on that, I place them nearer or further away from me. And then I start thinking about, what is the quality of communication? What's the strength of our relationship? And that's depicted by the arrows here. So if you look at this map I've drawn here, we can very, very quickly see that I have a little bit of a problem with both Andy and Chris. They are important stakeholders due to the size of their circle, but they're a long way away from me, and the strength of our relationship is not good. And this would then drive a communication plan where you start to think about, what could I do to strengthen that relationship? What conversations could I have with them? What do I need to do? Sometimes these people are because they're people that you only need when there's a problem. Maybe it's IT or HR or something like that. But it's really worth building your relationship and your brand with these people so that when you do have a problem, it's a much, much easier conversation. So a relationship map drives a communication plan of who you want to sell your brand to, who you want to be visible to. And then you can think about, for all those stakeholders, what will appeal? What have I got to offer? What could I maybe send to them, do with them, or help them with, which would mean that I become more visible to them? And it could be a whole variety of things. You need to think about what demographic they are. Is it that they're very active on social media, and so therefore, if I put more on social media, I'd be appealing to those people? Is it that you understand their pain points and challenges, and maybe you've got solutions that you can offer, or maybe you've got suggestions that you can give them? Or is it that you know their desires and their aspirations? What are they trying to do? Or it could be lots of other things. I've built a whole business on networking and very, very little advertising. And a lot of that has been done through advertising, through referral. It's also been done through sending people articles or communicating with them or supporting them, perhaps when they were looking for another job. And they remember that. So there's many, many different ways. One of the biggest ways I think we can build our brand is by using LinkedIn. And a lot of people don't see the power of LinkedIn, or they say, I just don't have time to do LinkedIn. I might question that. If you've got time to scroll through Twitter, or if you've got time to be able to do something else, then, and certainly Instagram or something like that, then having 15 minutes a day on LinkedIn will make a huge difference. Now, when you look at LinkedIn, you might think it's just for people who want to find a new job, but it's not. You can learn a huge amount. You can learn about your industry. You can share things about what your organization is doing. You can talk about what's going on in your team, things that you're proud of, things that are current. You can share other people's posts, but it's just being active. And then particularly connecting with people in your company or the stakeholders that are on your list so they can see what you're posting on it. So your offer. What we're talking about is, what do you do? How do you do it? What value do you bring? And we often don't stop to think about the value that we bring. Sometimes we're spending more time thinking about the actual job that we do, as opposed to what do we change? What value can we add to people, and how that makes a difference to them? So, when we're selling ourselves, how do we do it? I've seen a lot of people try and sell things, sell ideas, pitch to people. And often what I see is they spend a lot of time explaining the features of their idea or their pitch. So when we're selling things, it's really important that we are selling the benefits. So as part of your brand, it's a really good idea to get good at it. Let me give you an example. And I have here a little bit of a prop. I have a pen here. You can see my pen here. So if I was trying to pitch to you to buy this pen, I would say to you, this is a fabulous whiteboard marker here. You can see it's written on the side there. It's got a blue lid there, and it's quite a strong lid to pull off there. And it's got a really nice, fine nib. So what I've done there is I've sold you all the features of the pen. Now look at the difference when I sell you the benefits. This is a lovely whiteboard marker pen. It says it on the side, which is great because it means that you know this is the only one you should use, so you don't have permanent marker on your whiteboard. It's got a really, really nice blue cap, which means you can quickly see what colour it is, and it's very, very strong, which means hopefully you won't get it on your clothes. But most importantly, it has this very nice chiseled nib, which will make your writing look very professional. So what we're doing here is we're talking about the benefit linked to the feature. So when you talk about what you do, adding what the benefit is another important thing to do. So do have a think about when you're pitching ideas, when you're trying to get your brand out there, what are your benefits? Now, I'm going to come to a really, really important bit now. And this is something that I want you to take away and do and practice. And this is about how you sell yourself at a meeting and your elevator pitch. They call it an elevator pitch because if you only had, 20 seconds in an elevator, how much of yourself could you get over? What often happens is that we go to a meeting and you know what happens? They ask for the creeping death. Shall we go around the room and introduce ourselves? Don't you just hate that? And if you're number 12, you're sitting there getting yourself into quite a nervous state, waiting for it to be your time. So having something planned and up your sleeve is really, really important. And of course, it should start with an action phrase that's not a noun. I see so many people going around in these meetings and they introduce themselves and somebody says, hi, my name's Gillian and I work in accounts. And the next person talks about them working in accounts or them working in HR or them working in marketing because they follow the lead. And this is where it's your opportunity to be different. I have been in a meeting where somebody introduced herself and she said, hello, my name is, and we are recreating the sun. I'm like, wow, because she worked for the UK Atomic Energy Organisation. Now, if she just said, hi, I'm Gillian from the UK AEA, we all would have been, okay, don't know what that is, but. So grabbing attention in that first line is really, really important. I once had somebody start a meeting to say, hello, my name is, and I am the person who keeps the directors out of prison. And we all looked around, she said, because I am the company lawyer. And it was just wonderful to see those different types of introductions. So what can you say about yourself which will, in an appropriate way, grab attention? So you're adding a sentence about what you do and giving a statement of the impact that it has. And then perhaps ending with a call to action, which could be, I'm looking forward to working with you on this project. I'm looking forward to finding out more, or I'd love you to come and ask me some questions. Or if you need help with that, please come and see me, so that you don't fizzle out with a finish. So a really great introduction, which will get you known, and particularly if you have an introverted personality and might find it more difficult to do this, being able to start with a really strong good morning or good afternoon, because when you get nervous, your vocal cords get a bit of a squeeze and you might get a bit of a high pitch hi. So never start your introductions with hi. Just say, good morning, my name is, and that gives them the chance to hear your name, particularly if it's a complex spelling. And then step one. So do have a think about your elevator pitch and what you do with it. And here's some examples that you can see there. So let's look at some of the other things that we can do. We've talked about networking and visibility. And of course, we've got to factor into this the fact that a lot of networking, a lot of visibility happens like this now, which makes it even more difficult. You can't walk to a meeting room with somebody. You don't catch them in a coffee area. So how do you get known for them? So a few tips for both off-screen visibility and on-screen visibility. So how do you get noticed? Well, number one, we create disturbance. Challenge processes. If you sit here thinking, does this meeting really work? And I've been to it for the last 8 weeks. I don't feel it works. How about coming with some suggestions of things that could be done differently? Make sure that you do contribute ideas, and if there's anything that you can volunteer for, do. Could you write about what you do? Do you have something on your intranet which talks about a day in the life of an editor or a day in the life of somebody? And presenting as well. I often, when I'm running training courses, say to people, particularly when we did them face-to-face, would somebody like to present? And everybody goes, oh, no, not me. Be the one to say, yes, I'm happy to do it. As I said, if you're on LinkedIn, send articles to people. So I don't know whether you noticed this morning. This is in a certain place where it was talking about something I heard you talking about the other day. And take some time to virtually socialise. I think it's really, really important to keep in touch with people. But can you share your expertise? Would it help another department if you went and spent 10 minutes with them talking about what goes on in your area, so that you can help them to understand the bigger picture? Also, you can do things like creating internal content to perhaps develop something which will go on the internet to help other people. Perhaps you could suggest virtual coffee meetings. We kind of miss those occasions sometimes when we're doing a lot when we're on screen. Ask senior people their views. What do they think about what's going on with something? Could I have 5 minutes with you? Because I know you've got a view on this, I'd be interested. But also give feedback to other people or departments. If you see them doing something amazing or something comes out, then do that. I work with a lot of managing directors, giving them some presentation training, sometimes before they do big State of the Nation presentations. And what happens is they get to question time and things go a little bit quiet. And they're thinking, anybody got any questions? And they think, no. And they walk off and they say, was that all right? Because they're thinking, well, nobody really said anything. So did I get my point over or did I not get my point over? So being able to send a message afterwards, and we're not talking about something gushy or anything like that, just saying, it was really great to hear some more about the strategy this morning. It's made me a lot clearer about what we're doing in this department and I'm interested in, is something which is really appreciated more than you know. The higher you get at the top, the lonelier it gets. And as I mentioned earlier, introducing people. And then looking at off-screen visibility. Talk to your boss about your work. Now that we are in this hybrid world and we're not with our bosses so much, sometimes they don't really know what we're doing and how we're doing it. And make sure that you have a development plan which will help you to sell your brand. Maybe that's high visibility projects. But also think about, can I have a mentor? If there isn't an official scheme for mentors, ask somebody, because mentors can be great for helping you to understand in the industry how you're selling your brand. If your manager's very, very busy, are there meetings that they are going to, which if you went to them, they might not have to go to? And can you persuade them to take you along so you can get more visibility? And again, I said, please make sure that you're noting your achievements and successes. But I think one way that people look at you and can be very impressed is when you show your understanding of the bigger picture. What's the vision here? What's going on? What's important? And finally, on-screen visibility, really important. I think we've all got a bit lazy with these meetings on screen and we all kind of come in at the last minute and then find that our computer wants to reboot. But it's a great opportunity to come in early and have a chat with people. I'm always surprised when people just sit there staring at each other on a screen while they wait for the person who's running the meeting to turn up and get started. Have a chat with them, talk about what's in their background or, you know, how they are, where they are. Wherever possible, put your camera on. I still know a lot of organisations where people say, I don't put my camera on, maybe I'm seeing too much, but actually it does send a different impression of you. And bring the energy, even if you're an introverted type, my recommendation would be put the energy in at the beginning of the meeting so people hear that you're there. And then if you want to sit back and absorb some more, it's fine. If not, if you don't say a lot at the beginning, then as the meeting goes on, if you don't get the chance to input, will people walk away from that meeting thinking, well, they were bored or disinterested because you didn't say anything at all? Maybe there was some extroverts there and you didn't get the chance to say something, but don't let that happen there. Have something to share, and if you can't share, then do a summary. That's one way to get noticed. If you're thinking, I don't have any ideas to input, but people love it when someone says, so can I just summarize where we've got to? We've talked about this, we've agreed this, and it sounds like we're doing that. And people can stop and go, yes, that's where we are. And do make sure that you have a great listening face. There are some people who do sit at the meetings and their face looks like this all the time. Now that might be your concentrating face, but if the other person doesn't know that, they'll be making a judgment. So you can always use the chat as well. And I think the raise hand feature, which can be really helpful to be able to get your message across. So if you do find there's lots of people contributing, putting something in the chat or using the raise hand, I think can be quite helpful. And again, if you think it's been a really good meeting, then before you all log off or afterwards, you can always have a chat and say thank you and tell the person what was good about that meeting. But it's really all about finding every opportunity to get people to really see you. So in summary, do have a think about what is your brand, what's on the tin, okay? Think about it, write it so that you're ready if you ever are being interviewed for a new position or something like that, you can really say it. And also use that brand thinking to put on your LinkedIn. Think about who you need to communicate with, think about the stakeholders, and make a plan for how you're going to keep in contact with them. And think about the variety of ways that you can be visible. Chatting in corridors, chatting in lifts, as we said, when you go to a coffee area, talking to people, it's amazing the conversations that you can have. And think about your visibility on screen and off screen. And don't forget that 60% of your success comes from your visibility. I hope that's been useful for you in helping you to think about your brand and making a plan. So thank you very much for listening.